Okay, we're going to talk about pop art. We've already shown you some video on Andy Warhol and Roy Lichtenstein. And Andy Warhol specialized in products. And here's an example of pop art being invented in the 60s. And here's a magazine from March of 1990 where they're now using the idea of pop artists to advertise a product, whereas the pop artists were taking advertisements and turning them into art. So it really became popular and got a foothold in American history as pop art being invented in America. So your decision is to decide on a product or a cartoon. Roy Lichtenstein specialized in cartoons. So once you have picked whatever you're going to do, the next step would be to draw a sketch of it. Now this is a product, and Andy Warhol specialized in what was called serial painting because he's doing multiples of the same image and to change the colors a little bit. So instead of doing one big Nike swoosh and having two colors, here they've brought around and done different colored backgrounds. It looks like they may have the same color for the Nike swoosh, but here's an instance where they've divided it up into fours to do a serial type of design, and this is the sketch. So I told the student that they needed to make a one particular swoosh that they could place on their paper and trace. So once you do the tracing, you can see through where here's the outline of, and here they traced it, and they placed it in the center of each one, so it helps them to get everything lined up for their painting. So we're going to talk about when you do start to paint, we want to use some particular idea of just getting one color of paint at a time. The reason you get one color of paint at a time, and I know maybe in the past some of you might have had a paint set with all the colors of the rainbow, but if we fill this palette up with orange, green, yellow, purple, blue, all the colors that are over there, we may only use one or two of the colors. So we're only going to get one color, and notice that this is not filled up. It's not up to the brim because we don't know how far paint spreads yet. We don't have a lot of experience spreading the paint out. So we want to start off with a little bit because you can always go get more. The idea here is it's easier to get paint out of the container, the paint bottle, than it is to put the paint back into the paint bottle. So that's why we get one color at a time. Now, there's going to be instances where maybe you want to make a light blue background and there's not light blue paint over there. So you want to wait until you have some experience spreading this paint out to see how far it goes before you mix up a specialty color, because if you mix up a specialty color, you want to know how much to mix up, because if you run out and you have to try to mix that same color again, you may run into problems. So, and when you are mixing up a specialty color, you kind of got to remember, because that might be the next day that you have to remix that same color. So again, if you're mixing a specialty color, you want to do that at the beginning of class, not towards the end of the class, so that you have time to match it up, because the colors will dry lighter sometimes than they are when they're in the palette. That's a lot of information about painting. There's a video on the Rumler art class that shows you how to clean your palette up at the very end. I've added extra time to clean up time so we can do that. When you're starting to paint stuff in, if once you have drawn out your finished painting, the next step would be to go through and outline all this in black. Once you have it outlined in black, it's easier to come in and paint inside the black area. And you're going to spread the paint out. And let's say you go over the paint a little bit. Right here, I've gone over that black, and it's hard to see, but you want to try to stay, inside the lines. But afterwards, after you've applied all this paint, see, and I'm spreading it out thinly and evenly. You don't see big strokes of paint still left on the paper, because that takes longer to dry, and it'll dry at a different color than the paint that's a thinner layer. So you want to make sure. Here's another area where it's covered up, where I've covered up the black, but I can still see that black. So when it comes time that all this is dry, I can come back over with my black Sharpie and darken this black line again. Now, if you don't have a Sharpie, you can always just do it in pencil and then come in with a small paintbrush and black paint and paint all the lines. That's what they would have done before the invention of the Sharpie. They would have inked everything in with an ink pen, specialty ink pen, and then they would have filled the color in on the inside. So at cleanup time, please make sure you clean up. Try to look around your table and the room to see if somebody has paint that's already out that they're not using, and maybe you can use that paint if they're just sitting around. You know, you can trade paints. That way all this is not getting washed down the drain at the end of the period. The other key would be, let's say we're doing Garfield. Garfield's mostly orange. You'd want to start off with orange paint. Paint the largest color of paint in your design, and it should be your symbol of interest. It shouldn't be your background color. Shouldn't be the biggest color in your painting, because you're supposed to draw big. So orange for Garfield, you start off with orange, and then maybe you'd go in and paint the yellow for his cheeks and the pink for his nose and tongue, and then maybe his green for his eyes, and then you'd maybe mix up a color. You've got lots of experience with how far the paint spreads out. So now you're going to take a chance on mixing a specialty color for a light blue background, and that way you kind of have an idea of how much paint that you need to mix to cover all this. All right, let's have fun and do pop art.